Greetings, everyone. This is Mike Reilly, the voice of Ironman. And this is the Old School Tri Show with my Kiwi mates Cameron Harper and Brian Ashby. The show that talks about all things triathlon, old and new. We're powered by Ansco Foods, bringing you nutrition and good health from New Zealand's beef and lamb. Thanks for listening, everyone. Enjoy the show.
Welcome along to another episode of the Old School Tri Show, brought to you by our magnificent friends at Ansco Foods. And Brian, today's an interesting one in that I was always told growing up, never meet your heroes, you may have to be disappointed. But disappointment is the last word I would use. This guy is just an absolute legend and has taught us so much about what we do. And great to have him on so far.
And he's already been on because we heard him in the introduction to this one. He's a friend of ours. He's the only person that we've spoken to that hasn't actually won Ironman New Zealand, but he's so much bigger than that. It's this guy, our friend, Mike Reilly.
Ansco Foods is proud to be the new naming partner of Ironman New Zealand, ensuring every stroke, pedal and stride is powered by the best nature has to offer. Ansco Foods is on a mission to bring nutrition and good health from New Zealand's finest beef and lamb. Ansco Foods, putting the iron in Ironman with New Zealand's finest beef and lamb. Visit anscofoods.com/Ironman to find out more.
Well, so good to catch up with our brother, our commentary brother, the voice of Ironman, Mike Reilly. And Mike, I guess that first and foremost, as we look at 40 years of Ironman New Zealand, if we wind the clock back, you were well established as the voice of Ironman globally. But just wondering, how did the hookup with New Zealand come about and evolve in those early years?
It came about with Brent, who was on the town council in Taupo, and Jane Patterson, and they came to Kona. Jane had been there a couple times, so they kind of heard what I did, my style and all that good stuff, and they took me out to dinner, and we had this big dinner, and Brent was telling me every tourist thing to do in Taupo, and all great, and I said, yeah, guys, but we have to put something together, and they said, we're going to make this happen. And it wasn't that year that it happened, it was the next year. So they just came and said, we like what you do and we want you to do it in New Zealand. The community will enjoy it. The athletes will love it. And I was excited to be able to come to another place in the world, which I came to find out very quickly, in my mind, one of the most beautiful places in the world.
So what year was your first year commentating in Taupo for Ironman New Zealand, Mike?
It was, let me think, 99 was, I think it was 2002.
No. I'm going to haul you back in. I'm going to reel you in there, Mike, because the first time I went was 2000, and you were there then, and that was Bentley versus Balance. That was Hellriegel versus Brown, and that was 2000. Yeah.
So it might have been 90 because the first year of Ironman Lake Placid and Ironman Florida was 99.
Yeah.
So it was 2000. It was 2000.
Okay. Jeez.
Yeah. And were you a little bit reticent about traveling this far for a race? How did you, from that initial approach, was it sort of like,
no, I had been going to Foster Tuncurry to Ironman Australia for a few years. And so no, it didn't bother me to travel that far or anything like that. And I had people tell me there's a bit of a difference between Australia and New Zealand. I had no idea what they meant, but I do now. And what I loved about coming to New Zealand is I got to come down for the second, down under for the second time in 1 year, and see all the, people I knew from Australia, meet the new Kiwis, and so I wasn't apprehensive or anything like that because I'd done it before. Early on in my career, I found out that all I can do is be me. I'm not good at faking it. I'm not good at putting on airs. I don't know how to do that. I just give them me, not my ego. I just give them as humble as I can be so that we take care of one thing and one thing only, the athletes. And so that was my attitude whether I was in Topol, whether I was in Foster, Tuncurry, Kona, or Lake Placid. And it seemed to work.
Because that's always been, and Brian and I have been lucky enough to know you for a very long time, but that's always been your focus, to get the athletes to, they are the star of the show. They really are.
They are. And I think when people get on microphones, they feel it gives them false power if they accept it. And just because we have a microphone in our hand doesn't mean we are better than anybody else out there. And I always avoided using I or me when I spoke at an Ironman race. Because if I used I, like I saw him do this, or they talk to me, it takes it away from them. It takes it away from our constituents, our athletes, our sponsors, our community. So I always stayed away from I and me, because it wasn't about I or me. It's about them. And I learned that early on, and people appreciated that. And plus, it made me better. It made me realize that, oh my gosh, that next finisher could be maybe the greatest finisher I ever see. You don't know. Or the greatest story I had ever heard. And over the years of 33, 34 years, I just kept getting stories every year that I'd go, are you kidding me? Look what that person overcame. And now they're in front of me, and I have the honor of yelling out their most prized possession, their name, and letting the world know that they're an Ironman, that they finished the race. And, when we came online with the internet and everything, you started realizing, oh my gosh, they're hearing me say that to their loved one, no matter where they are, what corner of the world they're in, they're hearing it. So while it was a big responsibility, it was still an honor to be able to do that 2,500 times a race.
Sorry, Brian, just one quick thing. Because if you think about the literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people you've caught across finish lines over all the years, you're exactly right, because there's so many people that they may do one Ironman. They've sacrificed so much with their family, with their work, with just life, right, to get ready for an Ironman. And to be complacent, to go, oh, you know what, I've done thousands of these, when in fact for them it's probably just their one time, right?
Yeah, I looked at it as if like we three right now, we're having a one-on-one conversation. That's how I looked at it at the finish line. When I saw that person coming down the chute, no matter what kind of look they had on their face, whether it was pain, joy, tears, I wanted to have a one-on-one conversation with that person as fast as I could, as powerful as I could. If there was somebody else coming from, behind them, and let them know what they wanted to hear. So it never got mundane. I never got complacent, because, oh my gosh, the next one, here they come. They have family. They have their own story. They've gone through hurdles in their life. They've had tough times. They've had good times, just like me, just like you. And so I would never discount that, because I said it so many times. It's like I only heard it that time I sold it to that person. Then I say it to the next one and the next one. And you guys do the same thing. It's when it's about them and it's not about you, it never becomes mundane or repetitive. It just becomes.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that helped me really fall in love with the event was, it was 35 degrees and I'm watching Hal Regal, a world champion. I'm watching Lisa Bentley, and it was like, wow. And then it's 11 o'clock at night and there's an hour to go. And there are these people that just look like you and me, and they're still out there fighting, and you're giving them what you gave Hal Regal and Bentley. And I think that's the beauty. I think that's the beauty of the sport. Everyone is Hal Regal, everyone is Bentley. It doesn't matter what time they're finishing.
Guys, I was standing at the finish line the last year that Jan Frodeno won Kona, when he set the course record. He comes back at like 10 o'clock. He's partying with everybody, putting lays on all the finishers. And it was about 11:40 or 11:50, 20 more minutes to go or so. And this woman came struggling in, leaning to the side. The handlers had to grab her so she wouldn't fall. Jan put the lay on her, and there was a gap. There wasn't anybody else coming in. He walks back to me. He goes, how do they do it, Mike? I go, what do you mean? How I could not be out there for 17 hours. I could not do that. I have no idea how they can. How do they do that? I go, Jan, they want to get to the finish just like everybody. And he was in awe. He was so inquisitive about how do they do that? Because he, in his mind, a guy could go sub-8 rolling out of bed, said to him, I couldn't do that. I couldn't be on my feet that long. So yes, while I'll give a world champion their just due when they come in, they are all world champions to me. They went 140.6 miles, 226K, and they did something in life that a lot of people can't figure out to do. Finish what they start.
And you gift them an audio tattoo. You are an Ironman. It's etched in the brain forever.
I had one person at the finish. You know, it's funny when we start talking, I start seeing different finishes through the years. Oh, I remember they just pop into my head. And one person finished. It wasn't Kona. I was someplace else. The final hours I was down, and he came through. I called him and everything, and he looked at me. He goes, "I got my diploma," and I thought he meant he just graduated from university and got a. I go, "Oh, congratulations! Way to get it done." Yeah, you just gave me my diploma, my verbal diploma. That's all I ever wanted for the last 10 years. And he's looking at me, pointing at me. I go, oh, okay. And walked away. And somebody from the side says, God, we should have had a graduation cap for that guy. You know? I guess it is. It's an audio diploma. He was happy to receive that.
In the early years, Mike, when you first came down here in the early 2000s, what was your expectation of Taupo and Ironman New Zealand, and how were you received by the locals racing and the local community?
When I would go into a place with expectations, I'd always be either disappointed or overjoyed. So I tried not doing that. When I landed in Taupo, you know, Jane picked me up. We came back to town. I think I met Arthur right away. You know, you meet some people that, and everybody was so darn nice. I equaled the people to the people of Ireland. I go to Ireland quite a bit, my home country, and they treat you like, you know, your brother or sister. And that's what happened in Taupo. I felt only after a day or two, guys, I felt so darn comfortable. And I looked so forward to race day to be able to, you know, rev up the crowd and do what I do. I didn't know what it was like before. All I could bring was me, my energy, my passion, and do what I did at other Ironman races, and hope to goodness that was enough. So it seemed to be. I mean, people came up afterwards. Oh my God, the finish line's never been like this. Really? What do you mean? You know, I just thought whether I was there or not, all finish lines should be like that. Yeah. So it was not. I wasn't apprehensive, but when I left, I knew I had found. I got in my heart. I knew I found another home. That's why it's very difficult for me not to be at the 40th anniversary of all the races I missed last year. Not having the microphone in my hand, this one is really digging deep. Like I'd love to be there. My wife knows it. My kids know it. God, you really want to be there, don't you? Yeah. I got my sister and brother-in-law coming to town that weekend from back east, and I made sure I had, come on out, you know, join me, just so I had a bunch to do. But I'll be watching the race online all day and all night long.
Right.
Fantastic. And that very first race, what are your recollections of that first year, Mike? With you know, because the one thing that stood out to me was just the extreme heat, and it kind of created a false perception to me about what it was actually like, because it's never been that hot since.
Well, you guys, I'm a heat guy. The heat has never bothered me. I've run in Death Valley. I've ridden in the desert. I like the heat. The heat is easier on the voice. You don't lose the voice. So when it was really hot, I had been in hotter situations the first year, but everybody was just like, oh my gosh. And then I realized, yeah, that's right. They don't get the heat here. It's like being in Ireland. You don't get the heat. You don't get the heat in Taupo, New Zealand, like it was. And that's when I learned Celsius Fahrenheit too, by the way.
Yeah.
Might have been you, Ash. It's 40. I go, 40? It feels like 100. What the hell are you talking about? So, but I knew the athletes were going to have a tough day, and they did. And I remember, usually we were halfway through the day, or we could have been at a hot corner. People were coming by. I go, you know what? You have to readjust today. You have to readjust. If you don't come through in the time you wanted to come through on, that's okay. Finishing is the order of the day. And I said that a few times during the day. And people came up to me, God, thank you, because I was pushing it and I knew I was going to. And some people did. They got the, 20K of the run and they were done because it was so warm. But so that's when I first realized the heat in a place where they're not used to the heat. That's a tough day.
Yeah. Was it, well, talking about those conditions, was there ever a year that actually frightened you in some way?
I've never been.
I'm thinking, like conditions that were thrown out in some way.
Well, yeah, the year we canceled. I mean, the year we canceled the race, on Saturday and did the half on Sunday.
Yeah.
It was 2012, I think 2012. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah. Ben Furtick, the CEO of that time of Ironman, he and I woke up at our hotel like at 4 o'clock, 4:30. I called him. I said, "You up?" Yeah. I go, "Let's go out there." So we put our rain gear on. It was a gale. It was just. So we went to the lake and we walked from our hotel where the lake is. We weren't on the water's edge. We were up above near the we were near the golf thing out to the water. And we're standing on the edge. The wind is blowing so hard. I actually started leaning forward. I go, Ben, we can't even fall in. I was leaning into the wind like, this is crazy. And then there was a glimmer of moon or whatever, or what. I saw some light on the lake. I go, oh my gosh, that looks like the Pacific Ocean during a friggin' storm. I go, there's no way. And he goes, oh yeah, maybe we can swim in that. I go, we're not swimming. There's no way. And then we had to call the whole day because it was so bad. So that was a tough day to tell the athletes we couldn't do it and had to go the half the next day.
And you'd remember the day 2006, and Cam Brown was in the middle of his streak, and that was 2006 when they ended up having to do it later in the day, and it was only a 90K bike and a 21K run, won by Ian Johansson and Joe Lawn. That was a big day too, weather-wise.
That was an odd day. That's the first time I had been involved. I've been involved since then quite a bit, because that kind of set the precedent of the rolling start of the 90K on the bike, roll everybody out. Well, the problem with that, and I could tell walking around transition, even I went into one tent and Cam was in there with a couple other pros and trying to rub their legs, and you didn't get to swim, and all of a sudden you're going to go on the bike and start going full tilt. Well, people did that, and athletes got done with that day, and I'm sure you remember that. They were telling me this was harder than a full Ironman, because for 90K they went full out. They got off the bike. They couldn't even run. I mean, they were just walking along. They couldn't understand. Some were looking forward to it. Oh, no swim, 90K. And then what did we do? We did a half marathon on the run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the half marathon on the run. And even when Cam came through, because, Johansson, he just got too much of a lead on the bike. Even Cameron Brown couldn't catch him on the run. Man, he was wrapped. He was just, I know one thing, he was pissed that he lost that race. And he should have been. It would have been his day otherwise. Yeah. And the other part is, where's he from? Johansson, where's he from?
Estonia.
Yeah.
I said the wrong country when he came in. God, I just remember. Where did I say? Oh, I said Slovakia. And I'm standing at the finish line, and he looks at me Slovakia, Estonia. And I go, yes, Estonia. I'm going, oh my gosh.
Because Ian's a wonderful fella, but he's the size of the three of us put together. He's a big, tall boy, isn't
huge,
he? Yeah.
Huge.
Well, fortunately, he won in Lanzarote later that year, so
Yeah.
you probably made him race with Angus, so that he got to go first over the finish line again.
You
Mike,
can't always be correct. The mistakes, made a lot of mistakes. You know, the tough thing about being on a live microphone, you guys, you know this. They can forgive you for what you say, but they don't forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're live, and so we have to watch what we say and do, and it's tougher than people think.
Well, one of the trade secrets that people listening to the Old School Tri Show won't know about is something behind the mic and us working together. And something that I always respected about you, Mike, was the effort you made to get name and place pronunciations correct. And look, there are different dialects of Te Reo in New Zealand, and we aren't exactly perfect at it, but for you coming in from offshore, you always showed a great deal of respect to both the people and the places of New Zealand. And I guess that's something that you've had to deal with across the globe as well in other races that you've worked.
Yeah, I just thought it was disrespectful to mispronounce, and obviously I did. And you mispronounce names and places, but I'd study as much as I could. I think it was you. Yeah, it was you, Cam. I looked at a word. It was WH8. It was Wakatera. No, fungo.
Whakatane. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Whakatane.
Yeah, Wakadane. And I'm going, how could that be? Look how it's spelled, you know? And I would have write it down phonetically. And
we ended up having a bit of a system, and then when either myself or Brian, whoever was be standing next to you, and we both knew if you had a pause, then it was obviously a name that you weren't familiar with. We'd look at it, it's like, Whakatane. You'd be like, Whakatane. And so you were very good, and you understood the vowels and the phonetics of the Māori language of today, which is great.
Yeah, even if you didn't quite trust us to start with.
Yeah. We'd be like, it's whatever the town was, and you'd be like, what? Like, just go with it, mate. We won't set you up. It's okay.
Yeah, I've got the ear to be able to pronounce something almost exactly as it was told to me for at least 5 seconds. That would happen with you guys. It happened with Australia and Mont Tremblant in Quebec, which is all French.
Yes.
And I worked with Alain Cyr, who could speak French and English, and I'd get stuck. He goes, Tre Vova. Okay, I got it. 3 Rivers, Tre Vova. Yeah. Oh.
Mike, you over the years, you developed a lot of friendships through the race in New Zealand. You've got them across the globe, but you mentioned Cameron Brown. Just some of the personalities that really stood out to you all the years of coming to Aotearoa.
You know what I found out, Ash? You know what I found out over the years? I'll talk the pros, the male and female pros. The ones that had the largest credentials, the largest resume, the most impressive events were the humblest. The ones that won 2, came back to defend, and that's really their resume was just starting, weren't always so humble. Then they'd get their ass kicked at the race, and they'd wake up and go, wow, this Ironman thing or long distance racing isn't something you can take for granted. Cam Brown, I believe, I consider him a dear friend like you guys, and he is probably one of the highest class individuals I've ever come across in the sport over the last 35 years. Highest class. And I say that because while he has this inner power of racing hard and wanting to eat up his competition, it shows on the race course. But off the race course, he's a genuine gentleman who respects everybody around him, will give you his opinion, but just full of class. And I found that through the years that, think about it. He won his first race. I was there. His second race, his third race. He won 10 and 10. Then I don't know what year Alain beat him, but then he won what, 12
12,
topos.
yeah.
Nobody's ever equaled that anywhere in the world in their home country of 12. And he's the same Cameron Brown as he was when I met the first year. So it's just a wonderful sport that, especially when you come across champions like that, you go, wow, there really are true human champions.
It showed the mark of Cam and his wonderful wife Jenny, and the relationship you have with them. When you did your last Ironman New Zealand in 2022, we didn't have any professionals that year, and yet Cam and Jenny were like, we need to be there to see our friend, and so they came to Taupo from Auckland. It's a solid 3.5 hours drive, and they came down there to watch the race because they love it so much, but to hang out with their mate, and I thought that was really, really cool.
It was one of the dearest things that anybody ever did in my last year. And, it's funny. I can remember you guys, we were announcing, we're going, and I'd turn around and there's Cam with a grin on his face, and we'd cut a joke or two, and then somebody else would come in. I go, you don't have to. I remember saying once to him, you don't have to stay here. You can go to dinner. Yeah, we'll go to VIP. Then you go to dinner. Then they're back there again, like two little kids in Disneyland, standing behind watching us do our thing. And I was so touched by that. I came home and told Rose, my wife, I said, you can't believe what Cam and Jenny did. And she goes, were they there the whole day? I go, yeah. Because God, they didn't need to do that. Yeah, no, they didn't. And others like yourself, it was very appropriate that my last Ironman was in New Zealand. But it was touching, very touching.
Were there any races or years in particular that stood out for you in terms of professional performance, either men or women?
Oh gosh, you're asking a loaded question there.
Yeah, I am.
I've seen so many. Usually it was the come from behind victories, or the ones where someone got past, then came back and repassed them. That happened once in Mont Tremblant, watching Lionel Sanders race.
Yeah.
And I'd be at a hot corner and he's coming by with another half marathon to go to the finish, and he looks like he's dying, but he's just pounding. I go, what's he got inside of him to be able to do that? Daniela Reef in Kona, and she would race that race like there was no heat or no wind. I go, oh God, that's something else. Chrissy Wellington, who had never lost. And then one year she went down to Ironman Australia that I was at. I interviewed her on stage, and that was really the first time the Australians got to see her up close and personal. And people would come up to me afterwards, oh my God, she's the real deal. So I saw a lot of incredible performances that have stuck with me. But the ones that always pop into my head are, I remember that 68-year-old woman who battled breast cancer for 5 years, the grandmother of 4. Her doctor said she could never do anything like this again. And here I am calling her an Ironman.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I remember. Those are the ones that even the professionals should take a look at and go, wow, if she can do that, I can do anything I want to do, and stay humble about it.
It's interesting too, Mike, if you think of a couple of Kiwi blokes, one of them unfortunately got his wings and no longer with us, and I'm talking about Tony Jackson and Mike Ramsey. They're from day one. And you became close to those guys amongst so many others that we'll talk about as well. But Tony Jackson ended up doing 28 before he passed. Mike Ramsey, I remember him in Kona, and you were wrapping it up, and this guy comes out of the background across the finish line. But they're incredible guys themselves.
He almost fell on me. I go, what the heck's going on here? I look, it's Ramsey. I go, dude, you okay? He was just delirious. And, that was the good thing about being able to go all over the world, because if they came to Kona, I knew people were going, how do you know him? Well, I've called him 8 times in New Zealand. I kind of know who he is. And Tony Jackson and his beautiful wife, Verna, she was so sweet at New Zealand in the last year, December of 22. I had a booth next to hers. I was selling my book, and she'd come over and we'd just talk and talk and talk. She goes, "How come we never talked this much when, Tony was racing and stuff?" I go, "I don't know. I mean, I got to know her better then than even before." So, but Tony Jackson was a special man. I always loved bringing him up on stage.
Yeah.
Remember, we'd bring him up for an interview, and his final years after he had his surgery, he still almost had a hole in his head, didn't he?
Yeah.
He had like a hole in his head. I'm bringing him up on stage, and I'm interviewing him, looking at him, saying to myself, "Holy crap, this is crazy." And he's just gregarious. "Yes, I'm doing well, Mike," and such a positive attitude. And you would think, oh my gosh, his words and his actions are inspiring thousands out there in the crowd right now. How beautiful is that? And now they still have the Tony Jackson scholarship, don't they?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Mike, another thing that really stands out to me about Taupo is the whole town comes alive for the event. It's just the perfect sized town, and the volunteer base that fronts up year in, year out. Is it like that? All the events around the world that you go to, is Taupo a little bit different, or is it similar, in other places that you visit?
It's a lot a bit different.
Yeah.
It is kind of stands on its own. The community of Lake Placid, because it's a small village town in upstate New York, is like that. But a lot of the Ironmans are in bigger cities, and they kind of get engulfed by the size of the city. Frankfurt comes out in full force. You can walk into any shop in Frankfurt, and "Oh, Ironman, I remember they say, "You're the voice guy." I go, "This is the first time here. How do you know that?" And it all kind of stems from Kona. But like I said earlier, when I left Topol for the first time, I knew I found a home, and coming back every year. My brother Don came with me, as you know, the last year.
Yeah.
And he had never been to New Zealand, been all over the world, and he was just enamored. And then I remember he's in the VIP tent during the race. I went over, I go, "You doing okay?" And somebody said, "Yeah, we just want to be with your brother. We don't want to be with you. Go back to work." I'm going, "Jesus."
Your brother is definitely a charmer. That man, he knew how to charm people, and yeah, he had. I remember looking at him in VIP, had all these young women around him. And I said, "You're right, Don." He said, "I've never been better."
Well, it was a couple months ago. It was January. No, it might have been. Oh no, Christmas time. He was over, and we spent a lot of time together. And he said, "Are you going to New Zealand in March? Are you going to go?" Because he would have bought a $10,000 ticket. He don't care. I go, "No, I don't think so." "Really?" And then he asked me about a month later, "So are they going to bring you over?" He didn't care if I went. He just wanted to come with me. It's a wonder he didn't show up by himself.
Yeah. Tell him we'll pick him up at the airport. It's no trouble.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the guy that led him astray in the hospitality tent was somebody who should have been actually on the microphone working with us, Mark Bone, co-commentator.
Yeah, Boner, I don't know where he went during that day. He was having more fun than anybody. But I got to introduce Don to a dear friend, JJ, as you all know. He used to have a bar, restaurant there, and JJ was in there. So that was cool to have those two meet.
And some of the other personalities, you mentioned, the likes of, and we don't go through everybody, but, the relationship you've had with the Ironman team over the years, and, with James Patterson, and Jeanette was in there for a long time, and you got Wayne Reardon and Arthur Corbett, and I can't go through everybody. There's just so many, but they welcome you like a long lost brother every time, and you do to them. Like you said, it is like family, really, isn't it?
It is. Jeanette came from her town 2 days before the race, and we had breakfast, and she didn't have to do that, and it was beautiful seeing her because you're in the trenches together. Putting on an Ironman race is a daunting task, and anything can go wrong at any time. You're very well prepared. You got cones and barricades. You got everything where it should be, but you never know. So the roadies, the carnies, as I call them, putting on the race, you just become one of them, and their family, and you don't want to see your family not succeed. So when I'd come to Topol and got to see Arthur and see Wayne and see the Reardon family and see everybody, I was home. I was like, when Rose went with me a couple of times, she became close to everybody, and it just it is it sometimes it sounds funny or hokey to say, oh, they're like family. Well, they truly are, and I maybe that's why I'm really missing New Zealand. Sure, I want to see and be there for the 40th anniversary, but I miss you guys. I miss everybody. I wish I could transport myself and just start walking around T1 in the morning and people go, Reilly, what the hell? Yeah, I'm just here having a good time.
Yeah. I think also, and I think your impact on the race itself shouldn't be underestimated, and that and some of the people there as well. We talked about Cameron Brown, but I also think about people like Joe Lawn. I mean, you had a great relationship with Joe, 7 times winner. Meredith Kessler. Meredith's lining up for the 40th as well. It's incredible, these athletes you get to know and enjoy their company and watch them just race like anything.
Yeah, I had Meredith on my podcast at the end of last year, and we talked about Topol. She actually just sent me a message. I wish I could transport you here, to New Zealand. And Joe Lawn, like I say, they watching her when Joe was I remember her as an angry runner. She looked like she wanted to just punch somebody out when she was racing. And then she'd get done, she'd be all smile and sweet.
Yeah.
I go, oh my gosh. So it was, and I'm glad Meredith's coming back. I'm sure Joe's going to show up with her, although her daughter's getting older now. Her daughter's like,
yeah, she is. Yeah.
Teenage, every time they come up to me or they go, hey, Mr. Reilly, my mom introduced me, when I was like 4 years old. Now I'm like 18. I go, what happened at the time?
Yeah.
And Meredith, Meredith, I hope she does well. She's coming from a very cold climate in Ohio, lots of snow, lots of ice on the streets, and she's got a lot of time on the trainer down in the basement. So I hope she does well.
Mike, you mentioned your podcast. It's wonderful having you on the Old School Tri Show. Ironman Never Leaves You. Just tell us a wee bit about your podcast, and we'd love people to be able to hook into that.
Well, thank you for that. It's called Find Your Finish Line. My adage is we don't only need to find our finish line at a race and an event, but in life. So I like having guests on. Sure, I have a few pros, but I have age groupers that have gone through some very tough times, gotten to the other side, jumped over a lot of hurdles. And it's my hope that their stories will inspire others to get off the couch, get themselves moving. Don't make excuses. And that's what I really want to do. I want to tell other people's stories because they inspire me, and I feel it would be selfish not to pass that on. The same reason I wrote my book. I wanted to put stories in there. Sure, some people have heard some of them, but not all of them. Yeah. And there it is. Thank you. And so the podcast is, each podcast is like a chapter of a book to me. And they could be some of these podcasts. If I jump down the tunnel of doing book number 2, I haven't decided to do that yet, that I'd put stories in there, maybe of people on my podcast. But I had a guy call me the other day, and I just interviewed him. His name's Andrew Cartwright. He's got 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One of the biggest business guys in the country. Was a multimillionaire at 17 years old, had 7 businesses, but he's a 2-time Ironman finisher. And when he talks about Ironman, he's like a little boy in a candy store and just enamored with what he went through and what he did. So successful in his business life, but finishing the Ironman equaled that. So those are the types of people I like to have on the podcast.
The other thing, Mike, you talk about, the podcast and the book, but we can't forget, Brian, our team T-shirts. We got the Mike Reilly T-shirts.
Yeah, that was
signature on them as well.
So
that's
that means
my favorite bit of kit.
With the Sharpie signature. Does that mean you can't wash it or what?
I'm never going to wash it.
The door to my office is closed, so it's no one else has to deal with it.
That was BCC, the sound and production video crew, did those for me the last year. That was very nice.
Oh, that's fantastic. And tell me also, 2022, How did it pan out that Ironman New Zealand was going to be, and I never say last, but let's call it last maybe in this chapter, who knows, but it was your last official Ironman call. How did that work out to be the case?
Oh, I like that. I like that, Cam. There could be another chapter. Nothing wrong with that. It ended up being, because March, the race was canceled. Yeah. March of 22. We didn't do it. Well, I was disappointed. I'm thinking, I know this is going to, and I hadn't announced it yet that 22 was going to be my last chapter of that year. And so I had to kind of keep it inside. I go, are you kidding me? I'm never going to be able to go back to New Zealand again. And then came, I think it was halfway through the year, I talked to Andrew Messick, the CEO, and he said, what's your last race? I said, it's going to be Ironman Arizona, which is always November. And he goes, oh, that's what you want to be your last. I go, well, there's none after that in the US, and the only other one is New Zealand, and that's in December, but there's no budget to bring me down now. And Andrew goes, yes, there is. If you want that to be your last race, we'll get you down there. And he did. So much respect for Andrew Messick. Doing that, he didn't have to do that. And so he gave me the opportunity to come and do Ironman New Zealand, that December of 2022. And, it was kind of, even though, guys, there wasn't any pros there, which I go, oh, God, there's no pros. But then it was appropriate for me to finish with an age group race, all about the age groupers, from the first one to the last one. Yeah. The heart and soul of our sport, the ones that, make things happen when they've got to juggle so much other stuff in their lives. So it was kind of cool to have it be an age group race only.
It was deeply moving, Mike, for us come midnight that evening, because for so many years, post midnight, there would be one or two people that might have been a minute or two outside the deadline, sometimes even longer. And you would hang around, you would stick around, and we would bring them all home and show them the love, even though they were unofficial finishes. So midnight that night, that was very, very special, a special way to sign off at that time with the I guess the tribute that was paid at that moment.
Yeah, the tribute with the Hawkeye and being given. I have this hanging right in my office for me every day.
Yeah.
Which keeps me safe in any water I go into. Maori, what's his name? Tony? Was it Tony?
Snow.
Snow, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And what he said to me, he put his head next to mine and whispered in my ear, and it's something I'll never forget. So I cherished that. And you know what? I just felt safe. I felt loved. I felt that no matter what I do in the rest of my life, stuff like this is going to carry me through it from a land that I cherish with the highest respect and love. So I've had that hanging here underneath. It's been hanging here since I got home. So now I've got to rehang it because I just showed it to you guys. So let him know that, okay?
Yeah, we will. Yeah. And the irony was not lost on us either, Mike, that the man who has the words for every occasion was speechless.
Yeah, gee, no kidding. I go, what could you say? I was like, duh.
Look, like Brian was saying, it was exceptionally touching for those. I mean, look it up on Facebook or YouTube for Mike Reilly's last call. It's all there. But trying to just the way in which you did your big sign off, and I was like, then there was just a silence. And I remember the finish line, the Tūwhare Toa Kapahaka group came down. Snow was there, did the presentation of this lovely taonga that you have at your home now, and did this haka for you on the finish line. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it. It was an incredible moment, wasn't it?
It was. It was very special. I had my son Andy had hired a videographer to videographer that race, which we have all that footage. And I said, Andy, I don't care what it costs to have this guy. I don't want to. I want to remember things like that, but I want to see it years from now or have my grandkids see it. And cherish, teach them what New Zealand's all about. Because they know Papa went all over the world. And as a matter of fact, my 9-year-old, we were talking about a long plane flight. I go, yeah, we could go to New Zealand. We'd be on the plane for 13 hours. Papa, I want to go there with you. So you never know. I may be bringing a grandchild down there and showing them what the beautiful country's all about. I don't know if I'll introduce them to you guys. I need the kid to grow up to be something in life,
And so for you now, Mike, what does life hold now? I mean, obviously Ironman and those commentaries took up a lot of your time and your schedule. And I know a big part of you going, you know what, I think it's time. I think I'm closing this chapter. Was all about family for you, wasn't it? It was about spending more time with your grandchildren and your own family.
Yeah, it was. And I missed a lot of guys, 33 years. I missed a lot of anniversaries. I missed a lot of birthdays. I missed a lot of parties with friends. I never missed a birth. I missed a lot of stuff. And while maybe one birthday party wasn't such a bad thing, it was when they were starting to pile all on top of one another. And I look back and go, God, and Rose would always go to a party or go to something. Oh, Mike's in Placid or Mike's in New Zealand. And, that got tough on her too, being the single one. So my calendar was always full with, 12, 14 events on it. And they weren't, events where I'd go in Friday and come home Sunday. They were Tuesday to Monday or Tuesday. So they were always long events. So, yeah, I just had to cut that down. I didn't want to miss the Little League baseball games, the football games, the basketball games, the parties, the anniversaries. I just didn't, I said, this is enough. While I felt I could just keep going, which I always felt I could, you stay in shape, you stay with the game. But it was taking me, my voice would recover, 20 years ago overnight. And then it was taking 3-4 days. I go, God, I'm not 40 anymore. And so it's taking a little toll. It just was time. And, if I go back and do a race here or there, that could happen. I don't know. It just depends on a lot of things. But if I only do one race or 2 races, that's pretty easy compared to the 13 or 14 I would do.
Mike, to wrap up, 40th anniversary of Ironman New Zealand. You've been a huge part of it. You're the first guest we've had that isn't an Ironman winner, but you're bigger than that. You're the voice of Ironman, so it's a thrill for us to have you on board. Have you got one message? I'll give you the final word. One message for everyone who is on their start line and looking for their finish line at the 40th anniversary of Ironman New Zealand.
It is your day. It is your life. You've gone through the journey and put in the time, the training, the sacrifice of family, of work, and the day is yours. What you always have to remember, though, you're the cause of your own experience. And if you keep those experiences positive all race week long and on race day, you'll find the finish line. You don't quit, don't stop, don't ever give up. And when you hear your name called, your name's being called because you are a champion. You're going to come through the finish line and be heralded as that. And the rest of your life, no matter how it's gone before that finish line, is going to be different because you finished that race. So good luck to each and every one of you. But I say you don't need luck. What you need is perseverance to find that finish line.